What the hell is wrong with human combat reflexes? HFY story. The reflex that shouldn't exist. That was impossible. High Marshal Zytrel of the Valrathi Dominion stared at the frozen frame on the holo display, mandibles twitching in disbelief. The footage showed a human soldier, an unarmored one, dodging a hypersonic plasma bolt. Not reacting after it was fired. Not moving instinctively as the weapon charged. But dodging before the shot was even taken. That shouldn't be possible. And yet it had happened. The Valrathi Dominion had conquered over 100 species. Their war doctrine was built on absolute technological supremacy, overwhelming firepower, and predictive combat algorithms. The only species that had ever given them trouble was humanity, and now Zytrel understood why. The human wasn't just fast. He was moving before the enemy fired. You're telling me they see the future? Not the future, sir, Admiral Krashix growled, his claws tapping nervously against the war table. But their reflexes, they're unnatural. The moment a Valrathi raises a weapon, the human is already reacting. They dodge shots they shouldn't even know are coming. Zytrel leaned forward. Explain. The Dominion had fought humans for over a decade. They were resilient, sure. Stubborn beyond reason. But this was different. Admiral Krashix exhaled sharply. We've studied human combat footage across multiple battlefronts. Their soldiers, especially the elite ones, have an uncanny ability to react before an attack even happens. Not instinct, not training, pure reflex. Their bodies move before their minds register the threat. The room fell silent. That should be impossible. No species in recorded history had ever exhibited such an ability. Even the Dominion's top-tier bioengineered war forms had reaction times measured in milliseconds, but this was something else. Krashix played the footage again, slowing it to a fraction of real time. A Valrathi soldier aimed his rifle at a human in a war-torn corridor. No warning, no hesitation. Before his finger even touched the trigger, the human's body twisted sideways, dodging the plasma bolt before it was fired. Not luck. Not a flinch. A deliberate, preemptive movement. The impossible kill. Their reflexes aren't biological, Krashix continued. They move faster than their own neural processing speed should allow. We've seen them react to sniper shots before they fire. They dodge explosives mid-air. Some even react before an enemy decides to pull the trigger. Zytrel narrowed his eyes. That sounds like psionics. We thought so too. But the few psychics among them can't do this. It's every human, especially their warriors. That was worse. A rare mutation or genetic anomaly could be countered. But an entire species that could outreact their own technology? That was a strategic nightmare. And it wasn't just evasion. Another clip loaded. A human commando cornered in a trench, surrounded by Dominion enforcers. He moved before their weapons even lined up, weaving through fire like he was dancing to music only he could hear. And then, with terrifying precision, he returned fire, each shot landing with unnatural accuracy. Shot. Dodge. Shot. Move. Shot. Every movement fluid, efficient, unstoppable. It wasn't just luck. It wasn't just training. It was something else. Something fundamentally wrong with human combat reflexes. The theory that terrified them. Zytrel turned to his chief strategist, a battle-scarred veteran of 1,000 campaigns. Are they evolving? The strategist hesitated, then shook his head. Not evolving, sir. Built different. Humans evolved on a death world. Their ancestors weren't the biggest or strongest. They survived by reading tiny shifts in movement, recognizing patterns, predicting danger before it happened. Predicting, Zytrel echoed. Exactly. Their nervous systems are hypersensitive. They don't consciously predict attacks. Their bodies do it automatically. They read micro-expressions, environmental shifts, even the tension in an opponent's muscles. Their subconscious pieces it all together and reacts before they even know why. Zytrel felt his mandibles tighten. A species of predators so attuned to violence that they could outthink technology itself. Are you saying, he said slowly, that humans have a sixth sense for combat? The strategist hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. Humans don't see the future. They just react so fast it looks like they do. The kill order. Zytrel exhaled, processing the implications. The Dominion had fought hundreds of species, but never had they encountered an opponent they couldn't reliably kill. Now they faced an enemy that could see death coming before it arrived. This is unacceptable, he growled. We must find a countermeasure. Admiral Krashix hesitated. There might not be one, sir. The room went deathly silent. Zytral's claws clenched. If this was true, then the war had just changed. Humanity was no longer just a stubborn nuisance. They were a fundamental threat to Dominion supremacy. He turned, voice low and sharp. Prepare a kill order on all human elite forces. If we cannot outfight them, we will outnumber them. Burn their homeworld if we have to. His officers saluted and hurried to carry out his commands. But deep inside, Zytral couldn't shake the feeling that it wouldn't be enough. That no matter how many ships they sent, the humans would see them coming. The war that should have ended. High Marshal Zytral watched the war maps shift as Dominion fleets repositioned for a decisive strike. The kill order was already being executed. Entire regiments were moving to eliminate human elite units before they could wreak more havoc. It should have been a guaranteed victory. Instead, it felt like stepping onto a battlefield blindfolded. A pit of unease settled in his gut, something he had not felt in decades of war. He had crushed rebellions, annihilated insurgents, conquered entire star systems. But never had he faced a species that refused to die the way they were supposed to. The humans weren't just surviving. They were adapting. And something in his instincts, buried deep beneath layers of logic and strategy, whispered a warning he did not want to hear. You don't understand them. The first strike that should have worked. The Dominion's war doctrine was simple. Overwhelming firepower, rapid planetary decapitation, and absolute suppression of enemy resistance. The humans had been backed into a corner. Their forces were scattered, their homeworld vulnerable. This was the time to strike before they could regroup. Fleet Sigma 12, a task force of 60 Dominion warships, executed a pinpoint orbital assault on the human-controlled sector of Helios Prime. The plan was precise. Bomb their entrenched positions into molten slag, deploy shock troopers to mop up survivors, and neutralize any remaining elite fighters. It should have been an easy operation. Instead, it turned into a massacre. The first sign that something was wrong came before they even entered firing range. Sensors flagged an anomaly. A disturbance in the targeting algorithms. For a fraction of a second, the fleet's targeting systems wavered, as if they couldn't lock onto their targets properly. No jamming. No electronic countermeasures. Just hesitation. By the time the fleet commander noticed, it was too late. The trap that shouldn't have worked. The first ship to die was the Vraxel's Wrath, a Dominion battleship. It exploded not because of an enemy torpedo, not because of a boarding party, but because it fired first. The moment its plasma batteries lit up, something flashed through the void. An impossibly well-aimed counterstrike. The shot came from the planet's surface, a single railgun slug moving at relativistic speeds. A human defensive emplacement had fired the exact moment the Dominion ship revealed itself, hitting a weak point they shouldn't have been able to predict. The explosion blinded the fleet for a moment. And in that moment the humans moved. Zytral watched the footage in growing horror. They weren't fighting like any enemy he had encountered. They weren't reacting to the attack. They were predicting it. Every time the Dominion ships adjusted their firing angles, human counterfire was already incoming. Every movement was answered before it was made. Every strategy was countered before it was executed. As if the humans weren't just dodging bullets anymore. As if they were reading the Dominion's entire playbook. The soldiers that should have died. On the ground, things were even worse. Dominion strike teams landed in fortified human sectors, expecting an easy sweep. They were slaughtered. The human soldiers moved like they had rehearsed the battle 1,000 times before it started. They weren't just taking cover, weren't just firing back. They were avoiding engagements before they happened. A Dominion officer, attempting to flank a squad of human defenders, died before he even turned the corner. A grenade landed exactly where he was about to step. A Valrathi sniper, cloaked and invisible, set up his rifle only to find a human bullet already flying at him. It was as if the humans were ghosts, fighting seconds ahead of reality itself. One Dominion soldier, wounded and delirious, sent a final message before his signal cut off. They know. They know where we're going before we do. The High Marshal's mandibles clicked in frustration. This is absurd. How are they doing this? Krashix hesitated. Sir, we're starting to think it's not just their reflexes anymore. Zytral turned sharply. Explain. The theory that shouldn't be possible. Admiral Krashix took a breath. We thought they were just reacting faster. But it's more than that. Sir, they are anticipating the battle. Not just reacting but pre-reacting. That makes no sense. It does if they've developed combat intuition beyond anything we've ever seen. We know humans have unparalleled adaptability. What if they've evolved to process combat itself in a way we can't comprehend? What if they don't even need to think anymore? Zytral's mandibles twitched. You're saying, they don't fight the battle in real time. They fight seconds ahead of it. Krashix nodded grimly. Yes, and sir, we have proof. He pulled up a data stream, analysis from Dominion biomonitors. Heart rates, neural activity, movement tracking. It showed something horrifying. The best human fighters weren't just reacting fast. Their brains slowed down time. It wasn't actual time dilation, but the way their perception worked was bordering on something not natural. When faced with imminent death, their nervous systems spiked to impossible speeds, processing every detail, every muscle twitch of an enemy, and acting before their conscious minds even caught up. It wasn't psychic ability. It wasn't technology. It was raw biological combat perfection. A survival trait so deeply embedded into their species that it had turned them into something not meant to be fought in conventional warfare. The order that should have saved them. Zytral exhaled, claws tapping against the metal war table. This was beyond unacceptable. This was a tactical impossibility. If this was true, then they were facing an enemy that could not be outmaneuvered, could not be outgunned, and could not be outsmarted. Unless, initiate the contingency plan, he ordered. Sir? We can't beat them in a direct fight, Zytral growled. So we don't. We take the fight out of their hands. We end this war before they adapt any further. Silence. Then Krashix's mandibles clicked. Sir, are you suggesting planetary extermination? If necessary, Zytral said coldly. Before it's too late. He turned to the war maps, issuing his final command. Target Earth. Blast the homeworld. The order sent shockwaves through the Dominion's high command. Zytral ignored the murmurs, the protests, because deep inside he knew something else. A whisper of doubt. A realization crawling in the back of his mind like a parasite. If humans could anticipate battle itself, then maybe they already saw this coming too. The attack that should have ended it all. The moment the order was given, Dominion warships surged toward Earth with planetary annihilation protocols active. There would be no negotiations. No further battles. No prolonged war. High Marshal Zytral would erase the human homeworld from existence before their species could evolve further into whatever terrifying new apex predator they were becoming. The fleet entered Sol space in perfect formation, capital ships forming a tight phalanx around the superweapon carriers. A full planetary bombardment force, nothing left to chance. They expected resistance. They expected last-ditch human defenses. They even expected insanity. They did not expect what actually happened. The silence that should have meant victory. The first sign that something was wrong came when they entered orbit. There was no planetary defense grid. No interceptors. No battle stations powering up. No desperation transmission begging for peace. Earth floated below them, untouched, unprotected, a sitting target. For a moment, the Dominion fleet hesitated. The humans had fought like demons for every inch of ground. They had turned hopeless battles into slaughterhouses for the Dominion's finest. And now, nothing? It was unsettling. It felt wrong. But orders were orders. High Marshal Zytral exhaled and gave the command. Fire. The order should have ended humanity. Instead, it was the moment the real war began. The bombardment that should have worked. The first Dominion battlecruiser lined up its shot. Planetary siege cannons powered up, plasma reactors humming as they prepared to unleash energy capable of vaporizing continents. Then the impossible happened. A single voice crackled through the Dominion fleet's comms. A human voice. Not panicked. Not desperate. Just calm. Nice try. At that exact moment, every single Dominion ship's targeting system shut down. Not jammed. Not hacked. Just gone. Every screen went dark. Every firing solution vanished. Every weapon system refused to fire. Admiral Krashix bared his fangs in alarm. What's happening? Zytral's mandibles twitched. We're under attack. But there were no enemy ships. No human fleet. No orbital defenses. Just Earth. Floating below them. Silent. The trap that should have been impossible. The Dominion fleet's panic only lasted a few seconds. Their systems rebooted. Sensors flickered back online. Weapons recalibrated. And then they saw it. The entire planet was moving. Not physically. Not rotating. No, something in their perception was shifting. For a fraction of a second, every ship in the Dominion fleet experienced a complete, total loss of time synchronization. A missing second. Then another. Then another. The fleet that should have been untouchable. Something invisible tore through the first Dominion ship before it could react. Not a missile. Not a torpedo. Just something moving too fast for their sensors to process. The Draxel's vengeance, a Dominion dreadnought, shattered like glass. Not from an external explosion, but from inside. Bulkheads sheared apart. Crew compartments imploded. A second ship fell. Then a third. Then 10. Zytral's claws tightened around the command console. This wasn't orbital bombardment. This was execution. The reality that shouldn't exist. Sir. Krashix gasped. Our fleet, we're being attacked before we can process it. Zytral saw the data stream. The human counterattack was hitting them before their sensors even registered the threat. Ships were destroyed before alarms even triggered. Crew members died before they could scream. The humans weren't fighting in real time anymore. They had moved past that. They had gone beyond reaction. Beyond anticipation. They were fighting seconds ahead of reality itself. And the Dominion fleet had never been in this battle to begin with. The weapon that shouldn't exist. The human voice returned to the comms. You think you're the first species to try wiping us out? Zytral's mandibles twitched. Identify yourself. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. You declared war on something you don't understand. There was a long pause. Then the voice continued, almost amused. You thought you were hunting an animal. But what happens when the animal starts hunting time itself? Zytral felt genuine fear. He had spent his entire life waging war. He had seen horrors, unleashed them himself. But nothing, compared to the realization dawning on him now. The humans weren't just adapting to battle anymore. They had evolved past it. The end that should have been certain. Zytral forced himself to think. This wasn't supernatural. This wasn't magic. This was something real. A biological, cognitive adaptation, taken to an impossible extreme. Somehow, humans had weaponized their combat reflexes to the point where they weren't just reacting instantly. They were reacting before the battle even happened. A terrifying, perfect loop of instinct, prediction, and execution, happening faster than reality itself. And that meant, this war was already over. The escape that should have been possible. Zytral made his decision. All ships retreat now. But there was no escape. The Dominion fleet was already dead. The first ship to attempt a hyperspace jump never made it. Its drive activated, and then instantly detonated. The exact millisecond before it could escape. Another ship tried. Another explosion. Another. Every single attempt ended the same way. Zytral's heart pounded. How? How are they doing this? The human voice spoke one last time. We told you. This isn't a battle anymore. You lost before you even arrived. The last ship standing. High Marshal Zytral's flagship, the Imperium's Judgment, was the last Dominion vessel still intact. The only one left. Every other warship, 60 of the Dominion's best, had been erased from existence before they could even fight back. Zytral stared at the planet below. Untouched. Defiant. Smiling. They knew. They always knew. He felt something cold settle into his soul. This isn't a war anymore. It's just history repeating itself. The war that never was. High Marshal Zytral stood frozen on the bridge of the Imperium's Judgment. Around him, his officers trembled in silence. Not from fear, from something worse. They were watching a war dissolve before it could even begin. Not a single human fleet had fired upon them. Not a single planetary weapon had been activated. And yet, the Dominion's armada was gone. 60 ships. An empire's finest. Wiped from existence. Not by firepower. Not by sabotage. But by something else. Something the Dominion could not comprehend. The truth that should not be possible. Zytral forced himself to think. The humans had not adapted their bodies. Not their weapons. Not even their technology. They had adapted reality itself. A sensor officer croaked, "Sir, I don't understand. There's no evidence of attacks. No debris. It's like our ships were erased before they existed." The thought made Zytral's exoskeleton itch with unease. Time itself was breaking around them. And the humans? They were standing in the ruins of an impossible battle, looking bored. The last message. The human voice returned to the comms. This time it was no longer calm. This time, it echoed with something far more dangerous. Zytral. His mandibles clenched. Who are you? It doesn't matter. You came here to kill us. To erase our world, wipe out our people. You came with certainty, believing we would fight the way you expected. Pause. But you were wrong. A deep, amused exhale. You see, we're done with war, High Marshal. War is a relic. An inefficiency. We don't fight wars anymore. We end them before they start. The fleet that never had a chance. Zytral's claws dug into the command panel. This is impossible. The human chuckled. All we know. It was impossible when we first started. But war breeds evolution and we evolved past war itself. You tried to erase us, so we erased your chance to do it. A flash of realization struck Zytral like a physical blow. This wasn't a technology. This wasn't a weapon. This was something infinitely worse. A natural progression. The inevitable conclusion of survival. Humanity had stopped reacting to threats. They had stopped predicting threats. Instead, they had become something beyond threat entirely. A species that no longer needed to fight because they could erase war itself. The Dominion had lost before they even arrived. The death of a war machine. Zytral's mind raced. He had fought wars across galaxies. He had seen empires rise and fall. But never, not once, had he faced an enemy who stopped the war before it began. And now he knew why. There had been no records. No warnings. Because no one had survived to tell the tale. He had brought the might of an empire to crush a backwater species. Instead he had walked into a lesson. The lesson every invading force before him had learned too late. A whisper filled the comms. High Marshal. Zytral forced himself to answer. What do you want? I want you to remember this moment. I want you to understand what we are. And I want you to run. The bridge of the Imperium's judgment was dead silent. Run home, Zytral. Tell them what happened here. And if the Dominion ever comes back. The voice darkened. We won't be so merciful next time. The retreat that was already decided. Zytral had no choice. The Imperium's judgment turned. Slow. Broken. A single warship limping away from a battle that never happened. On the bridge his crew was silent. None of them spoke. None of them questioned. Because they had all seen the same thing. A war erased. An armada wiped from existence. An Earth untouched. Waiting. Watching. Daring them to try again. Zytral closed his eyes. He would not. No one would. The legacy of a forgotten war. By the time the Imperium's judgment returned to Dominion space, the Empire was already preparing for war. They demanded retaliation. They demanded vengeance. Zytral stood before the Dominion Council and gave them his answer. No. They recoiled in shock. What do you mean no? The humans must be. No. Zytral's voice was iron. We are never going back. He leaned forward. Because if we do, we will never return. The council fell silent. And in that silence, a cold truth settled into the heart of the Dominion. Humanity had won a war without firing a single shot. Because they had evolved into something that didn't need to. And the Dominion? The Dominion had not. Epilogue, the species that looked back. For decades the Dominion avoided Earth. They whispered legends. Rumors. Terrors. Worlds once eager for war stayed silent. Because in the blackness of space, beyond the reach of time itself, something was waiting. Something that saw the future before it happened. Something that had already won. And every time the Dominion looked toward Earth, Earth looked back. Smiling. Waiting.